Good morning, students. We will start the lecture now. Yeah, last class, whenever
Yes.
we had met, I have given you the details regarding the anomalous behavior. We have studied all the anomalous behavior starting from lithium onwards, isn't it? So, anomalous behavior of lithium, of beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, that entire series of elements which belong to the second period in the periodic table, that entire second period elements. Now, in the last one comes the neon. Of course, neon, we didn't have any special anomalous behavior properties for that. It's belonged to the category of noble gases. Then I started with allotropy also. If you remember properly, the previous class itself, I have told you what is this allotropy. We have been talking about carbon allotropy also, if you remember it correctly. So in this heading allotropy, you have to selectively study the allotropy of certain elements only. Say, for example, what is allotropy? That is, the elements are going to exhibit different physical properties, but their chemical properties are going to be the same. That is the way you define. For example, if boron, if you consider boron, this is an important element in group 13 elements. Boron is the first member. So when you talk about that boron, though its atomic number, electronic configuration are going to be fixed, structurally it is exhibiting two different forms. So one is called as the icosahedral structure, which you see here. The other one is the rhombohedral structure for boron. So boron exhibit two allotropies based on its structure. We call them as icosahedral boron and orthorhombohedral, alpha rhombohedral boron. Because of this structural variations, their properties are also going to differ. But in both the crystal structures, boron is going to have atomic number 5 only. That is not going to change. So this way of exhibiting different physical properties, that element is said to possess allotropy. Okay, so under boron, you have the two forms. Now, nothing is given about the remaining elements. Say, for example, group 13, the first element is boron. Below boron, you have aluminium. It goes on gallium, indium, thallium. All these are the 5 elements of group 13. But we are concentrating only on boron. We need not. See, we need not have to check about the other elements. We have to check only about boron. Okay. So this is what is important in 30. Similarly, when you go to group 14, main thing is going to be carbon. So on this carbon, you have been studying so many years since. Like, you know, it exists in the form of a graphite, it is in the form of a diamond, it is in the form of fullerene. So carbon allotropes are going to be very, very important. So let us see that it is given in a tabular form. It's given as a, this, what do you call this, flow chart form. Like, carbon is of two types, crystalline type, amorphous type. Crystalline is diamond graphite, amorphous is charcoal lamp black. And charcoal can be derived either from wood or from animal. So therefore, charcoal can be wood charcoal or animal charcoal. So this entire thing about the carbon is all these are allotropic forms. And basically, you call them into two types, three types, in fact, crystalline and amorphous. And apart from that, you have the fullerenes as one type of allotropy of carbon. Okay, so something about the fullerenes also you should be knowing. It is a very elaborate structure of fullerene that we will go to the next slide. You will see that. Now, thinking about the diamond and the graphite, the two important forms. See, there is a lot of variation in their physical structure and properties when you consider diamond and graphite. So main important thing is diamond is going to be hard, graphite is soft. And but both contains carbon only. Remember that both are carbon. Its chemical property, like its electronic number, electronic configuration, the number of electrons, protons, neutrons, everything is same for that carbon, whether it is existing as a diamond or as a graphite. But if you are going to talk about its physical properties, diamond is going to be very hard in nature, graphite is soft. Diamond doesn't conduct electricity and heat, graphite conducts. So like that, you have the major difference in their properties. And why this difference? This is because of its structure. Diamond is in a giant tetrahedral unit. Each carbon is sp3 hybridized. Whereas graphite is going to be only a two-dimensional structures, layers of atoms, carbon atoms, in the form of hexagonal rings. They are arranged one over the other. And every carbon is sp2 hybridized. This is the important thing with reference to graphite. So this is all about the main allotropy forms. Now, when we spoke about the fullerene, which is the next type of the allotropy of carbon, fullerenes are these special molecules which are in the form of a football-shaped molecules, big structures. Carbon, almost 60 carbon atoms will be linked together, forming a big structure. And this have an elaborate applications. And for research also, fullerenes play a very important role. Lot of research is going on in this fullerenes. All this again contain carbon only. So carbon has different properties as it exhibits different structures. One is a tetrahedral giant structure, which is diamond. Another one is hexagonal layered structures, that is graphite. So one layer can slide over the other. That's why the graphite has some lubricating softness in it. Whereas the fullerene, the other type of allotropy of carbon, is like a football-shaped molecule that is also having some special extraordinary properties. So you find the same element carbon is exhibiting various physical forms, and that is going to be the allotropy. So regarding group 14, you should give importance to carbon. Now coming to the next one, that is below carbon, you have this silicon is there. So in group 14, group 13, we have boron, aluminium, gallium, indium, thallium. All these 5 elements of group 13. But importance is given only to boron when you talk about its allotropy. Remaining elements we are not talking. Similarly, when you talk about the group 14 elements, carbon, silicon, germanium, tin, and lead. These are the 5 elements belonging to group 14. So in this group 14, what you will have, you will give importance to the first element, carbon, talk about its allotropic forms. And below carbon, you have silicon. So silicon also has some amount of allotropy exhibited by it. That is only simple. Like it exhibits 2 allotropic forms. One is a crystalline silica, another one is an amorphous silica, just like carbon. Now, crystalline silicon is same like diamond. It does not conduct electricity at normal temperature, but it will start conducting electricity if you increase the temperature. That's an important point to be noted. That is why silicon has an application as semiconductors. Okay, so you have to know this special character of silicon, which exhibits allotropy. So there is some more allotropic forms we have to discuss. I have to take a new slide. I'll do that. I'm sharing a new one. Then below silicon, carbon, silicon, germanium, tin, and lead. So regarding germanium and lead, they don't have any allotropic forms. But tin is there, which will exhibit allotropic form. It can be either an alpha tin, beta tin, or a gamma tin. And all these allotropic forms are interconvertible when you increase the temperature. Okay, so you have to know the 3 allotropic forms of tin, 2 allotropic forms of silicon. Out of that, crystalline silicon plays a very important role. It is acting as a semiconductor material at high temperatures, and at normal temperature doesn't conduct electricity, just like diamond. Okay. Now, similarly, coming to the 15th group, the next group. Here you have to concentrate on these elements: nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, and bismuth. Bismuth, we don't have the allotropic forms, whereas the other things can exist in different forms. Nitrogen, alpha nitrogen, beta nitrogen, they differ in their crystalline structure. So properties differ. As the crystal structure changes, properties changes. So one is alpha form is a cubic form, whereas beta form is a hexagonal form, crystalline form. So they differ in their structure. Then phosphorus, when you think about phosphorus, it has a number of allotropic forms: white phosphorus, red scarlet phosphorus, metallic phosphorus, alpha, beta, and violet phosphorus. Out of all these allotropic forms, it's all colors only given for phosphorus. White and red phosphorus are very important. Any doubts, students?
मैम ये अल्फा बीटा और गामा में फर्क
Which alpha, beta you are talking about? Phosphorus mein or tin? Everything is different. Properties are different for alpha, beta, and gamma. Definitely, it is different. Just because the properties are different, only they are present as allotropic forms. If the property is going to be same, why should we call them separate names? Okay. See, every form or every allotropic form is going to have some unique physical properties. Chemical properties are similar, whereas physical properties will be totally different. So you have many number of allotropic forms for phosphorus. Almost 7 names are given here. 7 types of phosphorus are given here. But the noted one, the major important one is white phosphorus and red phosphorus. If you see the difference between the white phosphorus and red phosphorus, they will be extremely 180 degrees opposite. The way the physical properties will be different like that. We will see that. Then when you talk about arsenic, you have a gray arsenic, yellow arsenic, and black arsenic. Of course, all three are going to be of different physical properties. Then when you talk about antimony, similar way, it's a metallic antimony, yellow antimony is otherwise called as alpha antimony, which is an explosive compound. So,
मैम
yes.
मैम ये ब्लैक वायलेट और रेड व्हाइट ये कलर का डिफरेंस समझते हैं, लेकिन अल्फा और बीटा में फर्क क्या है?
Properties, their physical properties are going to be different. If there is going to be a lot of research done, then we can tell you all those differences. Okay, whatever is required for the syllabus only, I have put it as a slide. Otherwise, I have not included certain things which are not required for you. So according to the syllabus, the white phosphorus and red phosphorus has to be highlighted. So that is why I didn't bring any properties of alpha, beta, metallic phosphorus, gray phosphorus, scarlet phosphorus, violet. So all those details I have not included. Okay, so I will include all these things as a separate notes and then I will post it to you. You read and you understand from them. Whichever is important for the exam, I have prepared only those collectively. I have summarized it and I am giving it to you as a crisp small notes. Okay, now coming to the white phosphorus we call them as the P4 molecules because it's tetrahedral geometry. 4 phosphorus molecules are attached to it and its bond angle is going to be 109 degrees. It's not 109. For a tetrahedral means it should be 109, but it is not 109. You don't expect this bond angle. Rather, 60 degrees bond angle is expected. So because of this, there is a strain in the geometry of the molecule. As a result of it, molecule is unstable. And as a result of it, it is extremely reactive. And there are again 2 types, alpha phosphorus, beta phosphorus. Alpha white phosphorus will have a cubic crystal structure, while beta phosphorus will have hexagonal crystalline structure. That's all is the difference given to you between alpha white phosphorus and beta white phosphorus. No more extra informations are required. Whatever information selectively given to you, remember that only and read. Okay. If you go more detail into it, then we may require 1 more year to complete it. Then next comes another important difference. White phosphorus has a high melting point. It is having garlic smell. It is soluble in carbon disulfide or bisulfite. You can call it anyway, CS2 formula. It is poisonous in nature. It exhibits phosphorescence. Phosphorescence is again another physical property. Light emitting capacity. Even when there is no other source light, it emits light on its own. So that becomes, it gets charged when the source is available. Then after when the source is off, put off also, it emits whatever radiation it has absorbed previously. That is phosphorescence. Similarly, all these points, what you studied for white phosphorus will be just opposite for red phosphorus. So red phosphorus is a polymer, one-dimensional polymer. White was tetrahedral. This is just a one-dimensional structure in which the phosphorus bonds are opened and is replaced by, that is external to tetrahedral structure. It is not a proper tetrahedral structure. It's an opened type of a tetrahedral molecule. So as a result of it, there will not be any strain in the molecule. So the molecule will be stable. and less reactive. Whereas you see its melting point very high compared to the white phosphorus, 817 Kelvin. It is having no smell. The one was having garlic smell, but this one doesn't have any smell, odorless. It is insoluble in CS2. It is non-poisonous. It will not show phosphorescence. So this is what is the difference between white phosphorus and red phosphorus. Now, apart from that, other colors are also there. Little bit we will think about black phosphorus. It is like a graphite. It is having a graphite-like structure, a puckered sheet of phosphorus atoms. So it is called as a flaky layers you call, because graphite is also a layer-like structure. Similarly, just like black phosphorus, you have violet phosphorus also that is having a rhombohedral structure. So this much details are enough about the allotropy of phosphorus. Now coming to arsenic and antimony, these two, again they have tetrahedral structure only represented as As4 and Sb4, but they are not stable at room temperature. And the stable forms are two-dimensional layer structure similar to black phosphorus. And these allotropes, they have very high melting point. And of course, bismuth we need not have to study. So this is all about the group 14 allotropes. Now coming to group 16. Group 16, you know, isn't it? Group 16, oxygen. It exhibits as O2 and O3. O2 is ordinary oxygen molecule and O3 is its allotropic form. So that is a simple one regarding oxygen. Now below oxygen is sulfur in the group 16 periodic table. That sulfur has a variety of allotropic forms. Say for example, sulfur allotropy, they can be called like this: crystalline sulfur, liquid sulfur and plastic sulfur. So crystalline sulfur, inside this category, rhombic sulfur and monoclinic sulfur are very important. Not much information is given about colloidal sulfur. Rhombic and monoclinic are only important. Rhombic, you call it as alpha sulfur. Monoclinic, you call it as beta sulfur. Similarly, there is another allotropy, liquid sulfurs. This is all variety of liquid sulfurs are having different properties collected at different temperatures. So they are all labeled like this: alpha sulfur, pi sulfur, beta sulfur, mu sulfur, lambda sulfur, etc. Different, they differ in all properties. Then the next is a plastic sulfur, which you call it as gamma sulfur. This can be in fact obtained from liquid sulfur only. So these are the various allotropic forms, but we will not be studying all these forms. We will study selectively certain things only. One is rhombic and monoclinic, very important. Both of them fall under the crystalline type of sulfur. They show an anisotropy. And transition temperature. What do you mean by transition temperature? 869. From rhombic, it will become monoclinic provided it reaches this temperature. So below this temperature, 869, it will exist as rhombic sulfur. And above 869, it will exist as monoclinic sulfur. So whether it is rhombic or monoclinic, its crystalline structure is like this. It has all the sulfur atoms, 8 sulfur atoms linked together by covalent bonds, and it is having a crown-like shape. This is the shape of S8 molecule existing in alpha sulfur and existing in rhombic and monoclinic sulfur. Similarly, the next type, what we saw as liquid sulfur, which is of different forms are there. Different forms like lambda, mu, alpha, pi, all these varieties are there in liquid sulfur. Out of this, the two types are alpha sulfur, mu sulfur and lambda sulfur. These are the two most prominent liquid sulfurs, allotropic forms. And they are dynamic allotropic forms. What is the meaning? They keep on changing from lambda type to mu type, from mu to lambda again, like that, existing in equilibrium between the two. So these are the very important two forms in the liquid sulfur category. And how do you get them? By heating sulfur above its melting point. So when you are going to heat sulfur, it is going to melt and give you a pale liquid, which we call it as alpha. This is lambda sulfur. Now further you keep heating it. Even further heat, this pale liquid will become darker and darker and viscous, oil-like. And that is called as the mu sulfur. So again from mu sulfur, you cool it, it will go back to lambda sulfur. Lambda sulfur on heating giving you mu sulfur. Like that, the both will be in equilibrium with each other and both of them are liquids only. As a result of it, it is given a name liquid sulfur. And within that liquid sulfur, these are the two categories which are dynamic in equilibrium, keeps on changing from one form to another. So that is an allotropic form. Now, after this, you have another sulfur which is called as the gamma sulfur or a plastic sulfur, a separate type. This you get from liquid sulfur. When liquid sulfur is heated and cooled rapidly, you get gamma sulfur. So liquid sulfur will have this forms, lambda form, mu form, in any ratio, it will be there. So you get a variety of gamma sulfur and its ratio of lambda and mu in it keeps on varying. So apart from these things, you have one more called as colloidal sulfur. This is actually colloidal sulfur is obtained as an intermediate products during some sulfur chemical reactions. So this is all about the allotropic forms of sulfur, very elaborate. Now below sulfur, you have selenium, tellurium and polonium. So what are the allotropic forms? Selenium will have three allotropic forms, rhombic, monoclinic and gray form. Rhombic monoclinic consists of Sc8 atoms, just like sulfur, 8 atoms linked together. Whereas the gray form, the metallic form will be the more stable and consist of regularly arranged spirals of selenium atom. For tellurium, metallic and non-metallic forms are present. The metallic form of tellurium is more stable compared to the non-metallic form. And polonium will have two forms, alpha and beta form. So this is all about the allotropic forms of our group elements. So group 13, group 14, 15 and 16. So we are going to read the allotropic forms of these groups only. And that too, not all the elements are going to exhibit allotropy in that group. Selectively, certain elements are exhibiting allotropy. Now, next property what we want to study is catenation. You all know about catenation. Carbon is a efficient element to undergo catenation. That means what? Carbon will get attached to another carbon like that. It undergoes self-linkage. Another name is self-linkage. Same atom getting attached to itself again and again and forming a long chain. That is why you get all these elaborate structures of diamond, giant structures of diamond, graphite, etc. and etc. Fullerene. This is all because of the special property of carbon, which is catenation. Not only carbon exhibits catenation, in that group 14, below carbon you have silicon, germanium, tin, lead also. So silicon also shows some amount of catenation, and below that germanium also shows little bit catenation. So carbon is the best out of all. Silicon, little bit influence of catenation, and germanium also. Let us see that. You have a tabular column here. See, carbon, bond energy. So you have to require so much energy to break all the bonds existing between the carbon in its chain. So more energy is required to break those bonds. It forms a chain of great length, carbon. Excellent catenation. Then comes silicon. Of course, this also shows, but it forms only a small number of atoms. It also forms chains, but the number will be maximum 18 silicon atoms. You will see 18 up to the maximum in case of silicon hydrides, and in case of silicon halides, only 6 silicon atoms to the maximum it can attach. Similarly, germanium also forms some chains with some minimum numbers. Say, for example, only 6 germanium atoms can link to each other. Maximum number is 6 when it forms the hydrides, and when it forms halides, only 2 germanium atoms can link. So the order is like this. Carbon is the first one. You see, the allotropy of the catenation property of carbon is extremely good, followed by silicon, and followed by germanium. Germanium is a little poor in catenation, but it is similar to that of tin. Tin will also show similar type of catenation only. It also forms dimers like SN2H6 in hydrides, etc. Its catenation property is also similar to germanium. But lead is very poor. Lead, only a lead molecule can form. That's all. No more attachments with the lead. No tendency of catenation in case of lead. So this is the order in which the property of catenation is shown by elements of group 40. Then in the last point, or the last thing what we are going to read in this part of chapter, the main group elements characters, is diagonal relationship. So before going into the details of diagonal relationship, you should remember the second period. This we have studied, anomalous properties of lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. So you know all these elements by heart. They belong to second period. And third period also you know, because we have studied it in group. Group 1 means lithium, sodium, one below the other. Group 2, beryllium, magnesium. Group 3, boron, aluminium. Group 13, boron, aluminium. Group 14, carbon, silicon. 15 is nitrogen, phosphorus. 16, oxygen, sulfur. And 17 is going to be fluorine and chlorine. So you remember this also. So now when you draw a line diagonally across the periodic table, you find a line connecting lithium, magnesium, line connecting beryllium, aluminium, line connecting boron, silicon, like that. So these pair of elements, they are called as a diagonal pairs. 1 minute, please. These are called as a diagonal pairs. So read what are those diagonal pairs. Out of this, we are going to study only a few diagonal pairs. So lithium, magnesium is one such diagonal pair. Beryllium, aluminium is another one, and boron, silicon is another diagonal pair. So when they are present diagonally in the periodic table, they are called as diagonal pairs. Why we pair them? Because they have similar chemical properties and similar physical properties. So we will read what are those chemical properties which are similar to both, and why should they exhibit certain similarity? This is because both of them will have, say, if I consider lithium, magnesium as one pair, both of them will have same ionic radius. They will have same electronegativity, and they will have same polarizing power. So this question of polarizing power comes when you talk about the molecule of lithium, molecule of magnesium. Polarizing power. One is able to polarize the another and they form a covalent bond. So the polarizing power of lithium molecules will be just the same like the polarizing power of magnesium molecules. Okay, so these are the things which are common to all these diagonal pairs. Any two members of the pair, diagonal pair, will have same ionic radius, same electronegativity, same polarizing power. Three things common. Just because these three things are common, we put them as pairs. And these pairs are present diagonally in the periodic table. And because of these three properties, that is electronegativity property, ionic radius property, polarizing power property, because of these similarities, they show their physical similarities as well as chemical similarities. So we have to read like that. Now the first pair what we are going to read is lithium and magnesium. 1 minute. Okay. So these lithium and magnesium, as I told you, it is a diagonal pair. So this pair shows the relationship and exhibit diagonal relationship. You see their sizes, ionic radius. Of course, one is in +1 group. Therefore, oxidation state is +1. The other one is group 2, so +2 oxidation state. Even if their ionic charges are different, their size is going to be almost similar, 90 ppm and 86 ppm. So the ionic radius is same. They will have same electronegativity. They will have same polarizing power. So because of these three similarities, they exhibit certain common physical properties. First common property is both are very hard compared to any other metals in its group. Lithium is also hard and magnesium is also hard compared to the elements of their respective groups. And both of them will have high melting point and high boiling point. Both of them can form salts like lithium chloride, magnesium chloride with some hydration in it. So it always forms salts containing water molecules in it. Both of them are like that. These becomes their physical properties. Now in chemical properties, you will say both of them will form nitrides like lithium nitride, magnesium nitrate, and both these nitrides can dissolve in water and give ammonia. They will liberate ammonia and they will form hydroxides. Hydroxides means they are basic in nature. Any hydroxide is having a basic pH. And when you heat these hydroxide, you will get oxide. So what is the property we are talking? Both lithium and magnesium will form nitride. They will undergo hydrolysis, giving you ammonia and hydroxides. Hydroxides on heating will form oxides when they are heated in air. So this is common chemical activity shown by both the members. Now, apart from this, they form fluorides, carbonates, phosphates, lithium fluoride, magnesium fluoride, lithium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, lithium phosphate, magnesium phosphate, like that. And they are all sparingly soluble. Sparingly soluble means less soluble in water. Then, if you are going to heat lithium and magnesium, they will not lose their luster. They will show a bright flame. 1 minute, please. Hello, madam. Pratibha, madam. Hello. This is, yeah. This was just to know about, because actually right now my FY lecture is going on. No problem. I'll talk to you just 2 minutes. I had a doubt. Immediately by 11:50, it's okay. Immediately by 11:50, I have the practicals. So today it's a combination of A division and C division. C division students can we take them? Okay. Yeah, I saw that. So ours is a combined practicals. A or also there. A division students, I can take them, isn't it? Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to do. No, absolutely no problem. No, I could understand it. Okay, bye, madam. Thank you. No, this is an emergency for you, This is the emergency for me. So that's all. No problem, madam. Okay. Thank you. Bye. See, students, after this lecture is over, you have the practicals, right? A division, some of the students will be coming for practicals.
Yes, ma'am.
So after this, room number 12 is vacant. You don't have any lectures in room number 12, right?
Ma'am, we don't have any lectures in room number 12.
That's what I am saying. So instead of joining in the PG practical room separately, you have a practical classroom, isn't it? Instead of that, I think only A division students are allowed for practicals. So if that news is confirmed, in the same room, I will be engaging in practicals because I don't want to miss it, So once, already Friday, Saturdays has been number of holidays. You are lagging very much behind. So if I take for A division, at least you will be benefited. Why you should be affected just because C is not being called for practicals? That is my way of lookout. That's my lookout. So if I am talking to sir also, Dubey sir also, our HOD sir and our principal sir also. I'm getting a permission. I just want to get permission from them that if I can conduct the practicals at least for A division. Okay. So anyhow, we will see. Yes. क्या दिया है फिजिक्स के लिए? हाँ करेक्ट, बराबर है. But yeah, exactly. That's why I am also saying for today we will have in room 12, this room, whatever you are facing the lecture, no? So after the lecture, this room, we will have roll numbers from 1 to 52. Okay, so 1 to 52 will only come for chemistry practicals today. 53 onwards, they will go for physics practicals, correct? So physics practical students, you go to that room where Sandeep sir has told you. That is not this room, no?
Okay, ma'am.
Sandeep sir will keep a separate room. This room, after my chemistry lecture, I will keep it for chemistry practicals. I will conduct that 1 to 52 roll number students will remain in this classroom for chemistry practicals, right? That's what. Physics wale leave kar sakte hain, because you have to follow Sandeep sir's instruction, because you don't have chemistry practicals today. Am I clear? Roll number 1 to 52 has chemistry practicals. I want only those students to remain in this classroom after the chemical lecture, after this. Okay. Yes. Okay. So our next point is lithium, magnesium, both of them are reacting with water forming hydroxide. This is already mentioned. Similar hydroxide formation is seen. And both these hydroxides are going to be basic in nature. And hydroxide, when you heat, it becomes oxide. So these points you have to remember, just like anomalous behavior, how you studied. Like that, diagonal relationship between the pairs should also be remembered. What way they are similar. Lithium, magnesium is one, and beryllium, aluminium. Here I have to change this. It is aluminium. It's given as mistake as beryllium, magnesium. It should be beryllium, aluminium. Okay, please change that. Or otherwise I have to remove this heading. And I suppose I have posted this in the Google Classroom also. So start preparing for the exam. I will repost it again, making this change. Now, when you come to the next pair of atoms, beryllium and aluminium, both of them will have similar size. You see, ionic radius is not differing much. Covalent radius is also similar. Electrode potential is also similar. Electronegativity is almost similar. So their radius, ionic radius is similar. So all this becomes their common thing between beryllium and aluminium. Now let us see, their electronegativity is also same. That is the reason both are put together under the diagonally related pairs. Now let us see their physical properties, how they are going to be similar. So both these metals, beryllium and aluminium, both will exist in the oxide forms in nature. When you take beryllium mineral, it is going to be present in its oxide form. Aluminium exists in the form of alumina, which is also in oxide form. So both this existence same as their oxides. And from their oxides, by metallurgy, we get these elements, beryllium and aluminium. That is the electrolytic reduction from their oxides. Then when you heat these oxides, they evolve large amount of heat. That is exothermic reaction. And they form an inert oxide film on their surface. They are very passive. That is, they don't react with concentrated acids. They react only with the base like NaOH. They form a salt, sodium berylate, sodium aluminate. See, the formula is also very similar. BeO2, AlO2 with that of sodium. Only thing is oxidation number of beryllium is 2 plus here, and here it is 3 plus. That is what is the variation. Otherwise, this forms sodium berylate, this forms sodium aluminate. And both these metals form refractory oxides, and both are amphoteric in nature. What is amphoteric? They will react with acid also, they will react with alkali also. So the metal will react only with alkali, metal will not react with acid. Whereas the oxide, metal oxide, aluminium oxide or beryllium oxide, this is amphoteric. It will react with acid as well as with base. When it reacts with acid like HCl, it forms salt, beryllium chloride salt, aluminium chloride salt. When it reacts with the base or an alkali like NaOH, it forms sodium berylate. That is also a salt, sodium aluminate. So this becomes their similarity. First point is, while existing in nature, both of them exist as oxides. And they undergo electrolytic process, electrolytic reduction during their extraction. And the metals like beryllium, aluminium, they react only with the bases. They do not react with acids. Whereas the metal oxides, beryllium oxide and aluminium oxide is amphoteric, will react with acid also and with base also. So everywhere equations are important and it has to be balanced. So you have to practice writing the equation and balancing them. Two more properties are there. Nitrates. So what is this nitrates? Nitride, they react with the nitrogen and form nitride. After forming nitride, when they react with water, they liberate ammonia. The same type of equation what we saw in the first diagonal pair, lithium-magnesium pair. They also form nitrides. Like beryllium nitride is Be3N2, aluminium nitride is AlN. They react with water. Nitride, whenever they react with water, will form ammonia. So ammonia is the side product in both the cases. Main product is metal with water will give hydroxide, beryllium hydroxide, aluminium hydroxide. Okay, so these are going to be a set of chemical and physical properties for beryllium and aluminium. Now the next one is between boron and silicon. So the boron and silicon is the next diagonal pair what we are studying. Both of them have similar electronegativity, similar ionization potential. See, the numbers are given. 2 picometers, 1.8 picometers. Similar in their, not picometers, I am sorry. Electronegativity is just a number. Ionic radius is only in picometers. Here, nothing is radius. Everything is electronegativity and ionization. Okay. So this is going to be the similarity between boron and silicon. Now, certain similar properties is both are very hard and both are non-metals, both are bad conductors of electricity. So this point is their physical property. Of course, melting and boiling point is very high for both of them. And they are chemically inactive, remain unaffected in air. And both of them are present as borates and silicon is present as silicates. I think you will keep the mobile on and move out somewhere. That's why you don't know whether you are muted or unmuted. I am getting all disturbances. If you are sitting and watching the mobile, then how can you remain like this? You keep the mobile on and go somewhere away. That is the problem. Even if it is unmuted also, you are not near to it to mute it. So what happens is both of them are going to be chemically inactive and it remains unaffected in air. So boron forms borate, silicon forms silicates. That is another similarity. Both of them are covalent in nature. Now all these are all physical properties I have told you. Of course, chemical property is also there in between. Now equation starts. When they react with alkali like NaOH, what happens? Boron will form sodium metaborate. Silicon is going to form sodium metasilicate. See the names. So the names are important and their formulas are important. Similarly, this is with the NaOH reaction. Similarly, they can react. These are non-metals, boron and silicon, both non-metal. Non-metals can react with another non-metal also. So if it is going to react with nitrogen, it will form nitrides. If it is going to react with carbon, they will form carbides. That is what is given. Boron, B2O3, oxide of boron is reacting with carbon, giving carbide, boron carbide, B4C. Silicon carbide is SiC. Both are very hard substances and they are used as refractory carbides. They are called as refractory carbides. This is a very important property and a common property. I think all the diagonal relationships are over. That's all. Last slide is this one. Similarly, I told you they are formed nitrides. Nitrides is always same reaction. Beryllium, aluminium, we have seen how I have gone above. So this is our last slide. How they react with carbon and form carbides. That's all. So the time is now 11:45. We are starting the practicals by 12 o'clock in the same room. Then one more thing I want to talk with HOD and principal sir. Before that, I will do it. You all wait in the roll numbers between 1 to 52. Just wait in this room. Okay. So next class, we will see carbides. A new topic will be covered. Please go through your Google Classroom. This is uploaded and keep on studying. And wait in this room 1 to 52.
मैम फिजिक्स प्रैक्टिकल वाले गए थे?
Yes. What is that? Roll number 1 to 52 will have chemistry practicals.
फिजिक्स प्रैक्टिकल वाले लीव करे?
Yeah. Physics practical people can leave.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.